Dayforce is a leading global HCM platform designed to unify payroll, HR, workforce management, and talent into a single real-time system. Built with a continuous calculation engine, Dayforce enables organizations to access accurate payroll data at any point, reducing risk and improving decision-making. Its cloud-based architecture supports compliance across multiple jurisdictions, making it a strong choice for international businesses managing complex workforces. By bringing people data together in one place, Dayforce helps leaders gain visibility, streamline processes, and enhance employee experience. For HR and payroll teams, it offers the tools needed to drive efficiency, ensure accuracy, and support strategic workforce planning at scale. Find out more at dayforce.com.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today for Dayforce's May Coffee Collab. I'm being told the audience numbers are on the large side, so no pressure for us at all today. The concept of the series is to bring together experts to discuss the biggest topics business leaders out there are and should be talking about right now. Today's topic is one of my personal favorites, and I talk about it all the time. Payroll maturity, and most importantly, how to make that shift from chaos to decision-making gold. Listen to and engage with the conversation today as we delve into one of the elements that shapes the world of payroll and operation. In terms of housekeeping, we're going to monitor the chat and Q&A just to see what's kind of like going on, the questions you have, and we'll ask them as we kind of like go through the session. We're aiming to leave a little bit of time at the end just in case you have any more. But without further ado, I have two of those experts with me here today, and I'd like to start by introducing them both. I have with me Nick Day, who is the CEO of JGA Recruitment. Nick, tell us a little bit about yourself and JGA.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Super excited to be here. Super excited to see so many familiar names. For those not familiar, my name is Nick Day. I'm the CEO, as Ian mentioned, of JGA Recruitment Group, so we're a specialist payroll and HR recruitment firm. And essentially, over the past 20 years, I've placed thousands of payroll professionals in companies around the world, from small businesses right the way through to Fortune 500 firms. I've also launched a payrolljobsboard.com, which is the first website dedicated to payroll professionals. And in 2018, I launched the Payroll podcast, which is the most popular show on the subject of payroll anywhere in the world. In that show, I've interviewed over 500 payroll leaders, including Ian on this very show, software developers and practitioners, all about the future of payroll. So I'm hoping to bring some of those insights back to the audience today. Last year, I was awarded the Global Payroll Vision Award from Payroll.org, and I've even released a couple of payroll songs. So in short, payroll is pretty much my world. I hugely believe that payroll is the heartbeat of all organizations. I'm passionate about helping them succeed, about raising the profile of the profession. And I guess that's something I've dedicated my entire career to trying to achieve.
Okay, thanks, Nick. I've enjoyed many a conversation with you, and I'm sure there are many more to come within the future. I also have Christina Garza with me, Solutions Oversight Director. Christina, a little birdie tells me you're celebrating 3 years this month. Congratulations. Can you tell us about yourself and H Architect?
Yes, thanks, Ian. Yes, that is correct. I am at H Architect, and for about 3 years now, I am the solution oversight. However, I started my career in payroll, and my first payroll job was way back when Ceridian had HPW. So I went from all the way through the ranks from HPW to Dayforce. And now I have worked my way up from an implementation specialist to now a solution oversight. So I've seen the world from the payroll side into the implementation and consulting world. So I have a heart and a passion for payroll, and I know what it's like from both sides. Like you said, I work at H Architect. We are a trusted consulting partner with Dayforce. We do the full suite of implementations and optimizations to ongoing support, implementations, change management, all the works for Dayforce and companies. So that's a little bit about me and a little bit about H Architect.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, thank you both. It's great to have you both here. And my name is Ian Giles. I'm Global Payroll Director at Dayforce, and in the last 25 years, I've been fortunate enough to have gained all manner of payroll experience in over 170 countries. I've had roles in startup, scale-up, enterprise organizations, providing leadership, strategy, relationship management, and more to populations in excess of 100,000 employees. But enough about us. Let's move on to the agenda. Today, we're not going to go through a marathon of slides. This is a conversation. The three of us are going to talk. We're going to get the input from you. But throughout the conversation, we're going to explore best practice, how to determine where your organization is in their payroll journey, and the role of automation and AI. We're going to give you our thoughts and share our experiences of the impact of immature payrolls, how to become less reactive and how to focus on improvement, and then how to influence other business functions and grow employee satisfaction. So, what is payroll maturity? Is it a buzzword, word salad perhaps? No, not in our opinion. In simple terms, payroll maturity is the level of effectiveness of a company's payroll and ultimately how it pays its people. A company's payroll maturity can be assessed on a variety of factors, not limited to, but including the level of automation, accuracy, compliance with legal regulatory requirements, integration, security, business insights, and the overall efficiency of the payroll process. So that's what I think. Nick, what one or two sentences would you use to describe payroll maturity?
Yeah, similar. I mean, obviously, I see things from a slightly different lens. I don't process payroll, but I speak to payroll professionals of all sectors, all sizes, all verticals. And we therefore speak to people at very different levels of maturity. I would say that at the most basic level, you've got kind of firefighting, maybe very manually based tasks and processes. You can move through several different stages, which I know we're going to go through in more detail in just a moment. But I think that we all agree, and me and Ian have obviously spoken offline as well, that the final stage you want everyone to get to ideally today is to that strategic stage, that opportunity to get payroll to move away from that transactional reputation of being a cost center into a real value driver. And I think we can do that by moving through the phases. But certainly, I think there's still a lot of organizations in that firefighting sort of immature phase, particularly at the smaller end of the employee count. And I think as you get bigger, it becomes more and more important to move through the other stages so you can really add that strategic value. And I'm really excited to talk about some of the things that we're seeing through our lens as we speak to payroll professionals about what they're doing and how they're achieving that.
Okay, thanks, Nick. And Christina, what about you? What one or two sentences would you use?
Yes, I see it from the consulting world. We go into a lot of companies, and one of the things I see a lot in immature payroll is compliance issues, and companies that are not following labor law, so to speak, and you put yourself at a lot of risks and things like that, where lawsuits come into play, and so in your immature payrolls, that's a big risk. And so as you're moving through the levels and becoming a more strategic payroll, then those things come less into play because you have a more automated process, less manual, and you have your systems doing your things for you, where we build in those compliance things, and we have your audit trails, we have all the things that will help you be in compliance, and we have your rules to help you make sure you're in line with your labor laws. So to me, that's where I see in my world where we help you become from more immature to a more mature payroll.
Okay, thank you. So to the absolute basics, whilst the three of us would agree that there are 4 levels of payroll maturity, each of us titled them slightly differently. I call stage 1 immature. Christina, what about you?
Yes, sir. I'm in line with that, immature.
Okay, and Nick?
I call it firefighting. I think you're often in that firefighting mode. You're kind of scrambling to resolve issues as they arise. You're very manually orientated, probably higher risk counts and error counts. So I've termed it firefighting from my side.
Okay, stage 2, I call reactive. Nick?
I call it stabilisation. I think we're quite similar here, but I'd say it's the stabilisation phase. Yeah, okay. Moving towards stabilising things.
Yes, I think stabilisation, because you're trying to get on your feet, you're trying to stabilize.
Okay, stage 3, I'd call it controlled. Christina?
Yeah, you're growing, you're controlling, you're trying to get things less firefighting, more where you're trying to get to.
Okay, Nick, you use a different word?
Well, I'm going to keep your control because I liked it, but I'm going to add a word to it. I'd say it's controlled and optimizing. Not optimized yet, but we're optimizing things.
Absolutely. And lastly, but by no means least, stage 4, I would definitely call this one strategic. Nick?
Yeah, 100% agree. Strategic.
And Christina?
Yes, I agree. No, I don't think there's any other word for it.
Okay, so slightly called, we will call them slightly something different. So just to make it easier for everybody today, we're going to call it stages 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's think about this. So you'd think that labeling the state of somebody's payroll would be a little bit more than provocative, or even a punch in the stomach if you've been at it for a very, very long period of time. But it's turned out to be a light bulb moment on more than one occasion. And the reason for that is because people can relate to what you're finally saying out loud. They've lived it, they've breathed it, and they've got the t-shirt. Christina, what do you consider stage 1 and stage 2 payrolls to look like? What do they include and what are they missing?
So stage one is going to be a very manual, very inconsistent payroll. There's not really an order of doing things, and you're not really keeping track of anything, right? You're just doing it. There's not really any automation. There's no integration, right, between HR and between finance. People are doing things outside of the system. So you're going to be keeping track of things like your absences, your overtime. If you have any kind of like on-call bonuses, things like that, you're going to be doing it in Excel. Because of this, you're going to be having errors. You're going to be submitting payroll either right at your deadline or missing your deadline. And because you have all these errors, then we're going to get to like the term Nick was saying, firefighting. You're constantly putting out fires because you're either having missed payments, you're having overpayments, underpayments, right? And then you're dealing with your employees that are coming to you because their pay's wrong. So this is like, and all of this is happening. You're having no audit trails. You're having, just chaos in your payroll world. And then because your payroll team is working overtime just so they can keep up, which causes frustration, which causes, a bad morale on your payroll team. This is stage 1 to me. Then you move into stage 2, right? Where we're saying that you're becoming reactive, you're stabilizing. So you're still firefighting, but you're firefighting just a little bit less. You have less errors. You're starting to try to meet compliance, but you're not there yet. You're starting to try to have internal processes, but you're still getting there, right? You might create like a payroll checklist, but you have a different one for different locations. You might do it, but you might not do it, right? Your audit trails are still lacking. You might have a basic payroll system in place yet, or you might have one, but you're still not using it like you should. So you're still doing things outside of the system because that's the way you know how. So this is what they are. What you're missing is your documented payroll process. You still don't have any integration. You don't have your proper payroll system, and you have no controls and no audit trails. This is how I see stage 1 and stage 2.
So very much a case of we've always done it this way without improving and just surviving.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Nick, anything to add? And I'll ask you a question at the other end. What do stages 3 and 4 look like?
Sure. Well, I'm going to add quickly to 1 and 2. I would call it a very fragile process. I'll give an example. We've had multiple roles given to us by CFOs, CHROs, and say, Nick, can you define the job description for us? Because we don't know what we need. And it's crazy when you think that they're asking an outsourced provider, if you like, to create a job spec for a role that we really know very little about at that stage of the process. I think it gives you a real single point of failure often, as Christina mentioned. There's not enough documentation around policies, processes, even about the roles and responsibilities often of that payroll team. So that leaves you really at high risk of potential failure if that person was to leave or be incapacitated for any reason. I saw Darlene's comment in the notes as well. Very much a manual process without any automation at all. And there's a lot of dependency on those key people. So if they leave, that leaves you with a lot of risk and a lot more errors and a lot more costs and things. So I think we see that from our side as a very fragile state. And I think that's that brings a lot of risks, and we don't want risk in payroll. Payroll is all about creating trust for employees. It's about creating value and really building that brand culture of trust. And I think if that's broken, it's dangerous. So I think that's an important thing to add from my perspective as a recruiter. That's something that we see. I think in terms of levels 3 and 4, I mean, I call level 3 optimization, but I like your word of control as well. I think at that point, we're starting to look at how we can improve things for efficiency. So hopefully the organization would have gone through some degree of transformation at stage 3. So they're no longer reactive. They're starting to document processes. They're starting to delineate roles within the payroll function. They probably have some level of systems there that do integrate with HRIS or finance systems. Maybe it's a new implementation. Maybe there's still work to do at stage 3 before we become strategic, but they were starting to make progress. We're starting to reduce the duplication of work, hopefully reduce the number of errors. I see it as a process improvement place. I think as you move from stage 2 to stage 3, you really should see an improvement in the number of processes that have been documented. And we get a lot of roles given to us where we're looking for transformation specialists, and very much their responsibility is to come in and document processes so they can get to stage 4. And I think that's really important. I think that's something that we shift. Payroll Org did a recent study that said that automation reduces payroll errors by 85%, and that's really significant. From a recruitment perspective, I want to bring this into focus of how important this is, because there's multiple studies on this, that 24% of employees have been paid incorrectly once in a year. People have been paid incorrectly once in a year, 24% more likely to look for a new job. If they're paid incorrectly twice, that jumps to 49%. So that's a huge impact. And this is where you can move from cost center to value driver or to value impact. Because I think if you can improve things like retention for an organization, actually has a real knock-on impact on how you're starting to improve the profitability of an organization, the cultural levels of trust within an organization, and all the other things that come with it. So I think stage 3, you're looking at root cause analysis and improving and optimizing those processes. And then stage 4, very quickly, because I know I'm riveting on, is much more about the strategic side. This is where you become a strategic partner, and I'm so passionate about this element. There's a lot of talk about AI, and there's no way I'm sure we'll get through this discussion without going into more detail about AI and the impact of it. But AI is there really to free up the payroll professionals to be more of a strategic partner. And this is where we need to focus on the employee experience, which we're talking about all the time now. And that's building that level of trust. Employees trust that they're going to be paid accurately and compliantly and on time. And we need to build that trust, because those percentages I mentioned show that if you get it wrong, they're potentially going to leave your organization. So we need to have that strategic element on the employee experience side, but also on the analytical side, delivering analytics back to the business so they can make better, more informed decisions at a strategic level that really drives performance, and looking at payroll as a profit center rather than a cost center. And it's all about people at this level. It's actually not about tech. Tech enables us to be about people at stage 4. Maybe at stage 3, it's a little bit more tech orientated. At stage 4, we come away from the tech. Tech is doing its job in the background, so we can really be strategic at the front end.
Okay, lots of comments coming in. For Nick, can you share the study? I think you said it was Payroll Congress in relation to
Payroll Org. Yes, they did a study that said 85% process improved. Yeah.
Yeah, I would kind of like add to what Christina and Nick have both said. Stages 2 and 3, the middle part there is a really, really important one. This is all about the reduction of processes, the reduction of tech stack. This is where you actually start to get really smart. And as Nick said, the strategic part, and particularly to me, this is the bit that I'm really, really, passionate about also. Strategy means being able to deliver valued added excellence to the payroll function through AI. Through all of these improvements, we actually get to remove all of the mundane things that payroll has done for many, many years, going back to day dot. We get to become the strategic partner, the best asset that a business doesn't even realize that it's probably got. Okay, I think that kind of like takes us to yes. Okay, our first poll. Having heard what we've all had to say, that segues us very, very nicely into this poll. We'd like to hear, where do you think your payroll is based on what we've just said now? Is it stage 1, immature firefighting, stage 2, reactive stabilize, stage 3, controlled or optimized, stage 4, strategic? Off we go. I can't wait to see these results. We're not allowed to vote. So whilst we're kind of like waiting for those, I'm going to ask you whether or not, Nick and Christina, what you actually, what you think of the results once they kind of like come in. But what do you kind of expect them to be? What kind of percentages do we expect to see stages 1 and 2, then 3 on its own and 4 on its own?
I would hope to see most within stage 3, probably. I think stage 4 is still something that's relatively conceptual in the world of payroll. We're getting to grips with the shift that's happening. I think some are there, but it's not a majority. I hope that people see the potential for payroll in propelling businesses forward, so they're starting to get into the optimization phase. So I think most probably between stage 2 and 3, but I think then people might just tick that number 3 rather than stage 2 would be my guess. Will be interesting to see. Hopefully not stage 1.
Okay, fantastic. Oh, sorry, Christina.
No, I was going to say just from going in and doing the implementations and consulting, I see more stage 2 and some of stage 3, just seeing people where they are in their payroll, where they are in their workforce, and how they do things now. And there is a lot of this is how I do it now, and I don't want to change attitudes. So it is harder for businesses to move through these processes. But I'm with Nick. I want to see people moving more to stage 4.
Okay. I promise. Oh, the results are in. Okay, fantastic. So at stage 1, we have 11%. At stage 2, 37%. Stage 3, 44%. And only 8% at strategic level 4. Does that surprise us? Is that, bearing in mind what we've just said, where we kind of like think we are?
I think it's what we just said, the most between stage 2 and stage 3. I think we're seeing a real move towards trying to get to stage 4, but the technologies and things are still quite new. But it's really, really encouraging to see that, and people starting to, hopefully that's because people realize the strategic impact payroll can have if we get to stage 4.
Okay, so yeah, absolutely. 80% of you have got, well, what you believe to be stages 2 and 3. So we're not surprised by the results. So Christina, do you think the type of industry plays a big factor?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Your industry has a significant role in your payroll maturity, right? The different industries face different regulations. They have unique challenges, and your workforce structures and how the payroll is processed, how it's designed, how your automation is. If you take, for example, like a construction or a manufacturing industry, you're going to have a lot more hourly employees, a lot more overtime, shift differentials, even unions, CBAs. So you're going to need to be automated a lot sooner because you have a higher volume and a higher variability. If you take, on the other hand, like a law firm, a finance consulting firm, you're going to have a lower population of employees with more salaried exempt employees. However, you're going to need to have higher accuracy and be more in compliance. I mean, a law firm that is breaking labor laws, that just imagine that. But they they have to have sorry, I lost my train of thought. They have to have more less automation, and they have to have more integration. So your industry does play a very significant role in this.
Okay, great insights. And Nick, I forgot to actually get people to kind of like put the head counts into the chat, but do you think that the number and the head count plays a significant factor as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think complexity scales with headcount. We don't do an awful lot of, I don't have an awful lot of connection necessarily with payroll managers for sort of less than 500 employee businesses, because they don't necessarily even dedicate a full-time resource to payroll at those numbers. So it's when we get over 500 employees, you tend to start seeing real payroll careers develop and people starting to dedicate full-time payroll resource to an organization. So I think, employee size definitely has an impact. And I would suggest that even off the I think it was 8% that came back at stage 1, it'd be really interesting to know if most of that 8% are below that 500 number on headcount. I would suspect a lot of them would be. So I think it absolutely scales with complexity with headcount changes. I think the interesting part as well is, as you get bigger, there's a higher opportunity for errors. The bigger the organization, the more manual you'll become, the higher risk of the challenges that come with it. And we know that errors result in compliance issues, they result in fines, they result in erosion of employee trust, that breakdown of employee culture, and all the things that come with it. So I think absolutely it has a huge impact. We're seeing some numbers come in here now, which are around that 500 number mark for those that tick stage 1. So I think also it's important if you want to scale. I think you need to go through those stages. If you want to be in an organization that's fast growth, you want to make sure you've got the systems, the processes, the documentations, the policies in place, and the delineation of what your roles are within the payroll function to enable your organization to scale at pace, whether that's through mergers and acquisitions, whether that's through just hiring. These are complex processes, and payroll people are working, despite the emergence of AI, harder than they've ever worked before. So I'm not saying any of these stages are easy. There's a lot of burnout in the profession, and people think they're going to replace payroll jobs. Look, just ask yourself, are you less busy now than you were last year? Most are busier than ever. So yeah, I think scale has a huge impact, and it's finding the time to get through those stages, which is absolutely critical and very, very challenging.
Absolutely. We're going to come on to AI and roles in a little while. But Nick, for those people in stages 1 and 2, can you tell us why that never-ending circle of firefighting from cycle to cycle is going to be a barrier to becoming, being able to operate at that strategic level?
Yeah, I think a mind shift needs to happen. That's a mind shift actually both within the payroll professionals that are at stage 1, because sometimes you often get a response of, it's working, we're paying people accurately, so why change something that works? Why change it? Why try and fix it? But that doesn't necessarily enable you for the future. But actually, the biggest mind shift needs to happen with the stakeholders, with the CHRO, with the CEO, the CFOs. And I do think payrolls that are in firefighting mode need to be able to speak up. They need to show how payroll can be that value driver rather than a cost center. You can look at a number of statistics within your metrics, and I would start with retention. Obviously, something I'm really passionate about is recruitment, attraction, and things like that. If you're losing staff regularly due to payroll errors as you're trying to scale, that's not necessarily the fault of the payroll department, by the way. It's usually the fault of a lack of investment from those above them in the ability to make change. So, if you're able to show that actually with improved retention, you're going to save the organization time, allow the organization to be more profitable. If you're able to invest in analytics to deliver more information that helps them to make more informed and better decisions, I think that's really, really critical as well. So I think there's a mindset shift that really needs to happen, both within the payroll professionals that are limiting their opportunity to growth because they feel like it's working, so I fix it. But more importantly, within the C-suite or the executives that control the investment that gets put into payroll, to really create a business case that says, look, we can be a real profit center for your organization. We can improve the employee experience. We can improve your performance. We can give you analytics that really help your function. I would ask your executives one question, what's your biggest challenge right now, and how can I help support it with the data I have at my fingertips? And you'll be surprised at just how much payroll can do. So I think if we can get there, hopefully we'll start to get more buy-in, and we'll help to get more investment to move from stages 1 into 2, 3, and 4.
Absolutely, and that kind of almost segues again into something that's taking place next week. For those of you that are at Payroll Congress in Orlando next week, I'm actually delivering a talk on payroll performance metrics. So what Nick has just mentioned here, and it's all about how we can advise the business, what is important. If you can't or you don't measure something, it's absolutely impossible to kind of see how far you've actually got to go in that journey. Christina, following on from what Nick said, are there any other risks or factors preventing businesses from getting beyond those early stages of payroll maturity?
So it's not reaching your strategic level, and not reaching your strategic level has a lot of risks. So you're, like I've been saying this whole time, you're going to stay out of compliance, right? Absolutely. You're still going to keep being out of your labor laws, violating them. Like I said earlier, it increases your risk of having a lawsuit against you, especially in the States, right? You have all these laws in all these different states, and being able to keep up with those takes a lot of work. And so if you're constantly firefighting, never level 2, then you can't keep up with those kinds of things. You are going to have that financial risk. So you're having underpayments, overpayments, you're paying your payroll team to work all these extra hours. So you just always have that extra financial burden. your lack of integration, now you can't make your strategic business decisions. You can't have cost forecasting, you can't you don't have these analytics at the tip of your fingers. You can't have your reporting that, just push a button and now you have all these analytics that you're using right there. And so, moving to the strategic level, it just adds all these extra layers to your payroll. It basically takes your payroll in the lower levels is your bottleneck. And now by getting up to your strategic level, it makes your payroll team work with your business and allow your business to grow and become more strategic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would kind of like add to that levels 1 and 2 are probably, without the investment of technology, are probably your most expensive stages, because if you think about the cost of rework, the amount of time and effort it actually gets to take the payroll team to redo something, to do the outer cycle payments and all the rest of it, these are quite often things that aren't measured, aren't reviewed, aren't looked at by a business, but they actually do become the bottlenecks and the issues like you've kind of mentioned. We've made that all sound like doom and gloom, but I want to kind of like elevate things and kind of like show people how to make that payroll function the strategic asset that it can be. What does a strategic payroll function look like in practice? And I can see that question has been asked in a couple of different ways throughout the chat. So we're going to kind of cover off now. So where and how do you take your first steps? What are those steps? What do we need? Who do we need to bring along with us? And who and what can't we do without? The list is a very, very long one. But Nick, I want to come to you first this time. You work with clients of all sizes, with seasoned payroll professionals, like you kind of like said, they've seen and they've done all kinds of things, within their experience. You also see people getting into the industry with a fresh pair of eyes. How do those conversations from your point of view look when it comes to managing change and the approaches you see being taken?
I think you've actually tackled some of this already, but not just in today's talk, Ian, but in some of your LinkedIn posts as well about moving through these stages. I think we're seeing payroll now fully, right at the precipice of transformation. Most payroll functions are going through some level of transformation. And you mentioned the words a minute ago, it's about bringing the people along. Often it's not the payroll system or process or the tech itself that's the problem. It's bringing people along on the journey. And to do that, again, you mentioned in terms of your talk in Orlando, that's about measuring the ROI, looking at the metrics, showing how they support change, so showing about where an organization can get to in their own stages, not just the payroll stages of 1 to 4. Actually, how can we move an organization along from being, real champions of employee experience or champions of brand trust and things like that? Because we know the biggest reward payroll people get is that sound of silence. We don't want to wake up in the morning to 500 emails from employees. We know, therefore, something's gone wrong. So that silence is golden in the world of payroll, right? And we know as well, and we've seen it as headline news in the UK for some organizations that may have made errors here, that we get just a little bit wrong, we're headline news. So it means that we've got the power at our fingertips here to make or break an organization if we get this wrong. I think, the executives need to understand just how powerful it is in terms of how quickly trust can be eroded if they're not paid correctly and on time. I think the other thing to bear in mind and to remind your executives is this. I think that payroll is the only function in any organization that touches the employee experience every single month, every single employee. Right? Other functions don't. And HR might get involved if it's a particular case or particular process. Payroll touches base with every employee every single month. I think that's critical. On the second hand, we've also got payroll that has access to probably more data than any other function in an organization. And that's hugely powerful. And I think it's about time that those other stakeholders did understand just how powerful payroll can be, particularly if it goes wrong. There's no point in kind of burying our heads in the sand and hoping that never happens, because it's when it does that it's too late to firefight. We don't want to be in that stage. So look, we need to look at measuring things, understand the ROI of things, secure that stakeholder buy-in, absolutely invest in automation so you can be more strategic. You need to standardize your processes so that there's no single points of failure. You need to upskill your team through many things. It's much more of a soft skills market as well as it is a technical skills market now. Set KPIs, track progress, all the basic things that payroll people know how to do inside out and back to front in terms of a transformation project. It's understanding it's a journey, not a switch, and really I guess embracing it and hopefully bringing those people along. I go back to that question I mentioned before, and ask your other counterparts, what's your biggest challenge and how can payroll support those challenges? And don't limit it to finance and HR. Talk to IT, talk to procurement, talk to resourcing. Payroll data is so rich and golden that we just need to really access it to empower it and really raise its profile.
Fantastic. I could talk about this forever, but we've not got enough time to do that today. Maybe that's another session from someone's point. I've got two things to kind of like add to there. Nick and I are obviously from the UK, and he's mentioned the word monthly on a couple of occasions. So what I will say for the North American and Canadian fellows out there, bi-weekly and semi-monthly, that also includes as well. The only other thing that I'd kind of like add to that is to Nick's point about data. HR data, managerial data isn't complete. Finance data, very, very much after the fact, maybe better in some instances. Payroll is the only function that has the most complete and real-time data out there. Christina, one of the biggest challenges we face is stakeholder engagement. We've mentioned it very, very briefly. How do you and how should those listening get the buy-in required to manage change effectively? What steps should be taken?
So, it's crazy. I can't tell you how many times I went into an implementation and a company doesn't want to make a change until someone in the C-suite's paycheck has been messed up. And so, we obviously want to prevent that. So, as a consultant, this is something that we see every day, change management, right? And so you have to have a really structured approach. You have to connect with the change with the organizational goals. They want to see how you connect the change with them. You have to make sure to address, like Nick was saying, you have to address the issues and you have to have the resolution for their problems. Because, a very long time ago, I had a manager tell me, don't come to me with the problem if you don't have a solution. You don't want to waste anybody's time. So the steps for this: start with the problem, show them the impact, and show them the future. Because if you can't show them that, the size of the problem, and you don't want to see one or two people's checks messed up. They need to see the entire picture, show them everything that's wrong, and then show them how are we going to fix this, all at one time. Then what you have to do is kind of isolate each stakeholder. Show HR, how are we going to individually help you? Show finance, how are we individually going to help you? IT, so forth and so on. Because in reality, HR doesn't care how you're helping finance. Finance doesn't care how you're helping payroll. It's all about me, right? and so once you can buy in each person, then they can see it and they'll buy into it. They'll want the change because, me, unfortunately, right? Then you make a plan. You allow the stakeholders to have a say. Then you show them that what they're saying is important, because nobody wants to go along with the plan if they don't get to have an input in it. Again, it's all about me. And of course, it's not your business. So you really do need their input, and you do want to, you do need to take it into consideration. Then, of course, communication. Communicate. Have town halls, have Zoom meetings, have anything you need to communicate these changes. Be very, very transparent, and just make sure that you reinforce the why. People need to know why they're changing, because they're going to be very resistant. People don't like change. It's just a fact. We want to do things the way we've always been doing them. Then you have your change champions, and you have to, first of all, they have to buy into the change, because if they don't, they're not going to be willing to work with you. You are going to fill them with all the knowledge. You're going to train them, and let's be real. People are going to resonate more with their peers. They're going to be willing to work with their peers more than they are with your upper management, because that's who they work with every day. So they're, your change champions. They're the ones that are going to be out in the field. They're the ones that are getting everyone else in the organization to buy into this change. So then you track your progress. You show your results, and all of these steps are what's going to get your change into your organization, is what how you're making this reality come into play.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. Some brilliant and absolutely valid points there. I can see one of the conversations, one of the mentions in the chat is, what if your direct leadership has zero payroll knowledge? Any recommendations on bringing the business case forward to them? And to me, that's all about the persona, the person in the room, understanding what they need, like you say, and how to give it to them. The FCO wants a single slide with all of the numbers on it. The CHRO wants something completely different. You need to manage their expectations. It's something that I kind of like have worked on and written about. I'm more than happy to share that with anybody that's got an interest in it, if you want to make a note or a comment going forward. So just looking at the time, what I really want to do now is talk about the elephant in the room, the impact of effective technology as one of the many enablers of strategic maturity. We haven't spoken about it yet, and it's something that is not going away. It's growing arms and legs, and it's going to be here for a long, long period of time. The more it does for us, as we've said, the more we get to stop doing the repetitive, the laborious, the mundane activities that we've always done in the past. And that goes back to your point, Christina. We've always done it this way. As far as I'm concerned, that's for the dinosaurs. Let's move into this century. Nick, we've had the conversation or two, about this in the past. What does AI in payroll look like, and how can it impact employees on a day-to-day basis?
For me, I'll go back to, I'm all about pushing payroll into the limelight and raising the profile. But in reality, payroll should be almost invisible in the best sense in organizations, right? And I think AI really helps payroll to become more reliable, and it frees up payroll to do those strategic tasks we've been talking about today. In a really simple case, I mentioned monthly payroll earlier. So if we take the US market, for example, one major problem we've got in the payroll process in the States is issues with buddy punching, issues with ghost employees. So if you think about AI in the context of biometrics, something I'm really excited about seeing this emerge in the world of payroll, when we start to introduce technology like AI in the form of, for example, as one of many use cases I could give, biometrics, facial recognition, like the way we open our phone. Immediately, we can start to reduce buddy punching. We can start to eliminate things like ghost employees. There's lots of studies out there that have shown some of the impact that these things can have. But ultimately, what does it do? It allows payroll then to work seamlessly in the background, to be compliant, to be quiet, if you like, so because it's reliable and it's accurate, so that the employees can look at payroll like they do a sunrise. They know it's going to come up the following day. They know it's going to be accurate. They can rely upon it. It's going to be there for us. We haven't got to be concerned. And it goes right way back to what I've talked about a lot. Payroll is all about trust. AI can enable us to build more trust within our organizations, because it can spot anomalies at a much more rapid pace. It can reduce those manual tasks, that human error, whether it's through anomaly detection, whether it's through enhanced analytics. There are so many use cases, and we're discovering more every single day, biometrics just being one example of that when it works and it's accurate and it's on time, employees don't have to think about it. And that means we're doing our job really well. That means we're not having those 500 emails in the morning when we wake up because there's been a problem, right? And when it happens reliably, employees can focus on their job. They can be, when employees are happy, they're more productive, they're more motivated, retention improves. So understanding how payroll impacts those things is critical. And I'll go back to what you mentioned a moment ago about asking questions, which you've done some brilliant reports about this here, and I've read most of them, if not all of them. Start with asking questions. Don't start with the assumption that we know what their challenge is. It starts with those conversations to that new CFO. What's your biggest challenge here? And if it's a new CFO or a new CHRO, the chances are they want to implement some kind of change. That's what it's all about. So what is that change program? What does better look like to you? And how can I support that with the data that I've got on my fingertips? I think it's hugely exciting for payroll people, AI, because people are working, as I mentioned earlier, harder than they've ever done before. It's going to free them to be what I think to be where payroll really belongs, which is to be with the people, to enhance the employee experience, to allow the employees to perform better, more optimally and happier, because payroll now is not about data. It's not just about paying people accurately and on time. It's about propelling businesses forward. And I would really embrace AI as soon as you possibly can and not be fearful of it, because payroll people are not working any less now. They're working harder than ever before, which is why getting to stage 4 is so difficult. And AI is going to enable us to get there.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Love it. And I love the seeing payroll like a sunrise more than anything else. So I'm sorry, Kim, I actually wrote that down before you actually put it in the chat, so I'm stealing that before you. Christina, expanding on from what Nick said, how can AI and automation help accelerate payroll maturity?
I mean, I don't know if I can really say anything else that Nick didn't say.
You could say a lot.
I think he
Sorry.
covered it all, really. Because, I mean, it's going to do everything Nick was saying, right? It's going to improve compliance. It's going to reduce the manual work, right? You're not going to be doing things outside your system anymore. Your system's going to be doing pretty much everything for you so that you can do your regular day-to-day tasks. Improve analytics, you know, all the things. I mean, I don't want to repeat everything Nick said. Nick, I mean, you covered it all. So I honestly don't have anything to add to what Nick said.
Okay, I mean, I've got one thing to kind of like add to that, and I mentioned it a couple of moments ago. But for those concerned about AI replacing payroll roles over time, you know, I have this conversation all the time. I've spoken to Nick about it and others. I personally believe it will change roles, but it will change roles for the better. Roles will grow, they will develop, it will create new roles, roles we've never ever seen before. We're going to be moving more into governance and audit rather than manual processing. And I know, you know, it's available and out there, but Nick and JGA, if you've never ever seen the document before, have listed some 50 plus roles within payroll, and that is only growing. So that's a great resource. You know, have a look at that if you can find it. Nick, in reality, from your point of view, from a recruitment standpoint, how are you seeing that change?
Look, I'll make an observation, Ian, because I've known you for a number of years. You've been on the Payroll podcast with me as a guest, and I've known you as well, Christina, for an awful long time, right? If I look back at your careers, because I've been in this industry now for 23 years this year, so quite a long time, I've seen the profession change. It's unrecognizable from where it was when I came in. And I know that you've both been in the industry for an awful long time yourselves. The roles you have now are vastly different to what they were even 4 or 5 years ago. And I would argue that the roles you both have now are more exciting now than they were 4 or 5 years ago. Organizations want high-touch payroll professionals that can navigate change, that can use tools. I think the exciting bit now is it's not just about your technical skill and what you can remember from the qualifications you did or remembering a tax code or anything like that and what you can retain. Now we're really starting to see the soft skills come to the fore. You know, let's see payroll really start to blossom. Let's see the problem-solving skills these professionals have. Let's see the empathy that payroll professionals can have when they understand the impact a payslip can have. We're seeing a mental health crisis. Well, mental health is massively impacted by financial health. If we can get financial health right, payroll professionals can start helping that mental health crisis. There are so many links here to what the things that we can do. We're just limited by our imaginations. I think we've moved it on in a way that is just exciting. And I would ask everyone to reflect. I don't think we do enough reflection in payroll. I honestly believe that. Reflect on your own careers. If you're watching this now, and there's 2,500 people that I think have joined, you know, reflect on where you were 3 or 4 years ago and ask yourself, you know, are you doing a role now that's more exciting than it was 4 or 5 years ago? For me, that it was. It's adding more value than it's ever added before to organizations. It's got more respect than ever before. Even during COVID times, we had the Australian Prime Minister come out and champion payroll in the UK. They were key workers. You know, we're really starting to see the impact that payroll professionals can have on the world and on organizations. And we're seeing that from a recruitment perspective. We're seeing salaries go up. We're seeing that the types of role change. You mentioned that document we did. I think it was over 63 roles that we last audited that exist now in the world of payroll. And people want to recruit top talent, and top talent is what the the payroll sector provides. Lots and lots of top, knowledgeable, empathetic, bright, problem-solving talent that is ripe and ready to really help propel organizations forward.
Absolutely brilliant. You're totally right. And I think it really is about the soft skills on top of the qualifications and all of those kind of things. Now, you cannot be expected to know 50 multi-state legislation. You cannot, you know, and I've operated in 170 countries. I don't know 170 countries worth of legislation without, you know, going away, doing the research and all of that kind of stuff. The value you add is what you know, and if you don't know where to find that information, who to speak to, and who to bring along with you. I've got one final question for the both of you, and I'd like to start with Christina. What one action should attendees take within the next 30 days? What single piece of advice would you give them?
I would say that you to really evaluate your payroll and to see what stage you really are in, and then to make a plan to go through the stages to get to the strategic level, right? Ultimately, everybody wants to be at stage 4, but after listening to us today and really seeing what the stages 1 through 4 are, where are you really? And what can you do to move to stage 4? How can you get the buy-in from your stakeholders? How can you get them to improve your processes? How can you get them to want to help you get to stage 4? That's what I think you need to do. Because ultimately you want your payroll team to not be a bottleneck if that's what you are now. You want them to help your business grow. So that's what I think you should do.
I love it. I'd like to see everybody at level 4, because that then means what is level 5, 6, 7, and 8, because that's where we're going after that. Nick, what one thing would you say to anybody?
I know I talk a lot, so I'll try and keep this nice and simple, having listened to Christina's response, right? Start the conversation internally right now. As soon as you leave this call, if you can, you're still working, assess your payroll maturity, ask questions of whoever the stakeholder is that's responsible for the investment in your payroll function, and go and ask them questions. Identify a quick win and then execute it. The momentum builds movements, and we need to build that momentum. I'm hoping this is the first kind of flag in the sand today on this webinar to get people to ask that question and start that conversation. Don't wait till next month. Don't wait till the next budget cycle. Start now. Go and ask those questions. Find a quick win. Execute it. Because when payroll matures, it transforms the entire business. And the quicker we have those questions, the quicker we can start to show that.
Absolutely. Fantastic. I mean, the one thing that I would add would be, you do not know how far you've got to go until you know where you are. So measure, measure, measure. If something is working, continue to work on it. If something doesn't work, go back, review. To me, you cannot do enough due diligence and discovery. If you want to find out, where you are, like I say, that's where you need to kind of go. We've got a few more minutes left, but I'd like to give a special thanks to Nick and Christina today for joining me, sharing their knowledge and insights. I think it's been an absolutely brilliant conversation. I hope you two have as well. I'd like to give some more information on, if you'd like some more information on what you've seen today, there is a poll just about to appear on screen now, asking you if you'd like someone from Dayforce to reach out to you. If you do, please let us know. If you don't, no harm, no foul. So just the second part of that, and what we'd like to know, we create this content for you and all of the other content that we put out there, it's for you, for the audience. So please let us know if you would like to pre-register for any of these 3 upcoming events. In a couple of days, on May the 8th, we have our Solutions Showcase, Maximizing Payroll and Workforce Management. On the 20th of May, we have our May Spotlight, Simplifying Payroll and Operations with Confidence. And on June the 11th, we have our virtual Dayforce Summit, which is an AI takeover. We'd really appreciate your feedback. So let us know what you thought of this session with the NPS score that is just about to come up. So nothing's moving on my screen at the minute, so I'm hoping it's starting to on all of yours. There we go. There's that. Okay, so that was the final thing. Whilst that's on screen, what I'd like to do is to introduce you to Jason Roland to let you know about a piece of research that he and his team have developed. Jason, over to you. Can you tell us about yourself and what you and your team have been up to?
Absolutely. Thanks, Ian. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jason Rollin. I'm the Global Head of Sustainability and Impact here at Dayforce. I also lead an initiative called Workwell. It's a research series that's designed to deliver data-driven insights to organizations with employees in the United States. And what we do is conduct internal research, we fund highly credentialed third-party experts, and we conduct surveys of the American public. And through this work, we identify some best practices for organizations to improve the financial and mental health of their people. You know, this is obviously a very relevant topic for this discussion. I know Nick spoke about the mental wellness crisis that we all should do what we can to address. And so today I'm going to speak very briefly about a new report coming out in June. It's called The Freedom of Pay. And it looks at the potential benefits of increasing pay frequency and reducing waiting periods between paychecks on a company's workforce wellness. So for example, transitioning from monthly paychecks to biweekly, or from biweekly to weekly, or even more frequently than weekly, which can be done through our Dayforce wallet product, for example. So as you know well, just about every family carefully tracks and manages their household budget. And the unfortunate reality is that tens of millions of them endure significant difficulties when faced with unplanned or unexpected expenses. So things like emergency root canals and broken furnaces and transmissions, these challenges can force families to make difficult and in some cases even potentially dangerous decisions, right? So for example, for those of you in places where it snows a lot, think about an employee delaying buying new snow tires because they can't afford it, and because there's an upcoming snowstorm over the next few days. So perhaps, reducing the time between paychecks could really help these folks out. So while that makes intuitive sense to me, while it may make intuitive sense to some of you, it's a theory. And so we wanted to test this out. There's some academic research which shows clear benefits to reducing waiting periods, but we wanted to understand better and more directly from workers across the US if they themselves agree. So we conducted a survey with an external polling firm to understand the desire of the American public to, one, increase the frequency with which they get paid, and then two, understand how these increases might help their mental and financial wellness. So as I mentioned, we're going to formally publish this report in a few weeks, looking like early June, but we wanted to share some very initial findings now that you might find compelling. So based upon a polling of a representative sample of the full-time US workforce, we found first, almost no one wants to get paid monthly, only about 5% of respondents. Two, this level of desire increases substantially with certain groups, including 66% of Black and Latino workers, 7 in 10 of people in households with an income of less than $75,000, and 71% of those who rate their own financial health as poor. Third, nearly half of all workers said that reducing waiting periods between paychecks would be very or extremely helpful to their financial or mental health, which I think personally is a very remarkable finding. Now, this percentage also rises substantially for certain groups. So on the mental health side, for example, 2/3 of Black and Latino workers said it would be very extremely helpful. 56% of those with household incomes under $75,000 said the same, and folks who rate their own mental health as poor also said that would be very extremely helpful at the same level. We also saw very similar percentages from all workers as well as those groups on the financial wellness side as well. So you've got a benefit that's substantial on the financial wellness side as well as on the mental wellness side. Last, we also saw really compelling findings about ways increasing pay frequency would help employees with specific financial and mental health outcomes. So this includes things like reducing anxiety and stress, helping them manage their family's finances, and a better ability to pay bills, among some others. So we're going to break down all of this data in detail in the report in June. And if you're interested in speaking about the findings, getting the report, or anything else associated with the Workwell Research Series, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Obviously we've had lots of conversation going on within the chat. What I would like to do is for us to maybe go away, read the transcript, and where possible, actually get personal responses to the questions that we've not been able to answer today. That's something we'll work on, and we'll see whether or not we can actually do that. Again, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Jason. And thank all of you for joining us today. The only thing that I have to say now is I wish you all a great rest of the day.